Do men have to worry about bone density loss?
Not quite as much as women, I think everybody needs to worry about it.
Sure. How much popping am I supposed to do? Because when I wake up in the morning and I roll my feet around, they sound like popcorn. Is that bad?
Mine do too.
Okay.
And it's okay. So yeah, when I wake
There has only been one time in my life that I felt like I physically shared something in common with Natalie Portman. It was the scene in Black Swan where she wakes up in the morning, sits up, starts to wiggle her feet. The amount of popping that occurred in that moment in the film sounded so familiar. That's what my feet sound like when I wake up, and I have never felt closer to fame. My joints have always been of the popping ilk. I can't remember a time when I didn't hear a pop in my feet or in my hands. And who hasn't relished in the satisfying pop of a knuckle now and then? Does all this popping spell doom for us in the form of arthritis? Is it perfectly normal to pop like popcorn in the morning? Y'all, my name is Sarah, and I have some questions about our joints and our bones, for that matter. All right, today I have Michael Ruffalo. He is an MD of orthopedics at Wake Orthopedics, which is part of Wake Med here in Raleigh. I know you probably get Mark Ruffalo a lot.
almost every day.
I can see why. I mean, it's so close. Your parents had no idea what they were putting you into. So we're talking about bone density today and why our bones pop. And it's something you don't really think about until it starts happening to you, I would imagine. What exactly is bone density?
Well, bone density kind of refers to the amount of collagen and minerals that are in your bone. And a lot of people believe that it's a measure of the strength of the bone. And as we age, from puberty on, you're gaining bone density, and then you kind of maintain it throughout adulthood. And then in your older adult years, you start to lose bone density. And there's a lot of interest in trying to maintain bone density as we get older, because now people are living into their 80s, 90s, 100s, and we didn't used to do that 100 years ago. And so now we're trying to maintain our skeleton to maintain our activity level so we don't have fractures, we don't get, the kyphosis, the arch, the curved back you see in people. And so there's a lot of interest in trying to maintain bone density right now.
And is the only way we lose it because of menopause?
That is a huge risk factor in women. But the number one thing that will help us maintain bone density is going to be exercise, believe it or not. So weight-bearing exercise, lifting weights, because bone responds to stress. So bone is not like a rock. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I've got a bone, it just stays there. It's constantly growing and remodeling. So you have cells that break it down and cells that build it back up. And so when a bone sees stress, it says, hey, I'm seeing a lot more stress, and it makes it stronger.
Oh, kind of like a plant in the wind.
It's exactly like a plant in the wind.
Yeah.
Yep. And so the number one thing that people can do is remain active throughout their adult years and later adult years as well.
Do men have to worry about bone density loss?
Not quite as much as women, but I think everybody needs to worry about it.
Sure.
Because again, we're living so long these days. We have medicines that can prevent heart disease or delay that, and better treatments for cancer. And so we are living much longer. And so, even men in their 80s or 90s will have bone density problems as well.
Okay. I want to go through some facts or myths.
Okay.
Tell me what you think. Will popping a knuckle or a joint give us arthritis?
The answer for that is no.
Excellent.
Yes. And it's actually funny. There was a doctor who wanted to study this, and he popped the bones in his left hand every single day, like 3 times a day for like 40 years. And then at the end of that, he had no difference in arthritis, stiffness, or anything in those joints. And so popping
the only study that's been done?
It's probably the one that's most interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that popping any joints is going to cause any harm or progress arthritis.
Yeah, I really miss the days in medical training that involved the doctors.
Yeah.
Had to put your own body on the line. Okay. Feeling the rain in our joints.
That's a real thing. And I can't explain it. I wonder if it's just the change in humidity or the barometric pressure that just changes things just a little bit. So people that have some low-level inflammation or osteoarthritis, they can tell when the weather is changing. And I remember early on in my career, I was like, oh, that's nonsense.
Sure.
But it's been so consistent over the years that I think that's true.
Okay, but we don't know why.
I'm sure somebody does, but I really think that it's probably changes in the barometric pressure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the two types. I've read that there are two types. What are the types of arthritis?
There's many different types. So the
okay.
most common is osteoarthritis, which traditionally is considered more the wear and tear arthritis, but it's actually more complicated than that. There's an inflammatory component to that as well, which we can talk about later. There's post-traumatic arthritis, people that have had injuries, ACL tears, tibial plateau fractures that develop arthritis from that.
Okay.
There's inflammatory arthritises like rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic arthritis, which is a systemic inflammation that's also causing pain in the joints.
So with the last one you mentioned, you said psoriatic and rheumatoid. Why does it turn your hands into paws? Like why does the inflammation, how does it stay? I mean, I've seen people who have it and they have knobs on their. Why is that? What happens?
It's part of the inflammatory process. When a joint gets inflamed, the synovium, the lining of the joint, we say it gets hypertrophic, but basically it gets bigger in size, and that causes joint swelling. And as you get destruction of the cartilage, the bone remodels to some degree to help compensate for some of the laxity that's caused by that. So you will get bone spurs that form around joints. And then in rheumatoid arthritis, they also have, it has soft tissues as well. So a lot of times you'll see very deformed hands with rheumatoid arthritis because, all the tendons that are kept in place by the soft tissue pulleys and things like that get weak, and they can cause those tendons to slip out of place. And so that's why you see such deformity in rheumatoid arthritis.
I see. Okay. Is milk going to help us with this?
That is a long conversation about calcium and vitamin D supplementation, what you need to take.
Yeah, the vitamin D thing is huge, like standing outside in the sun, that kind of thing.
Yes, and so vitamin D is definitely helpful. So most Americans, I think, are deficient in vitamin D to some degree.
Okay.
And so the way you get vitamin D, you can get through diet or through sunlight and exposure to your skin. But we all work inside. There's colder climates. And so even if you're doing everything right, you may be vitamin D deficient. Vitamin D is really important for hormone metabolism, bone health, things like that. And so I think vitamin D is probably, if you had to pick one supplement to take, probably vitamin D.
Oh, I heard that you can't really absorb it.
No, you can't absorb calcium very well without vitamin D.
You can't absorb calcium without vitamin D.
Correct.
Okay.
And so the best thing is to supplement vitamin D to make up for any deficiencies.
Okay.
And I think the best way to do that is you go to your primary doctor, get a vitamin D level, just see where you are. So, and if you're deficient, then you can start supplementing with vitamin D.
Can you damage yourself if you're not deficient?
If you go overboard, you can. And so if you get very high in vitamin D, which is a little tough to do, but not impossible.
Yeah. Somebody out there can do it.
It can be done. You can get, kidney stones and things like that.
Okay.
And so it's one of those things where you want to keep an eye on it and just be aware of where you stand. So, when you do your annual physical, get a vitamin D level with that as well.
And then about the milk for calcium, what do you have to say about that?
So as far as calcium goes, calcium supplementation does not seem to work very well. And in general, it's better to get your calcium from food. And so dairy products are great. So milk and cheese and yogurt are good.
Okay.
But you can get them from certain vegetables like broccoli, kale, things like that. And so it's better to get your calcium through your diet because, one, you can only absorb about 300 milligrams per meal. So you have to do it kind of throughout the day.
Oh.
And if you take too much calcium, there is some concern that it can, again, cause kidney stones. But there's also been some studies where they did calcium supplementation in people, and it increased their risk of heart attack and stroke.
Oh, gosh.
And so, but that was with calcium without vitamin D. So I don't know if that necessarily correlates if you're doing both. But in general, try to get your calcium through your diet and also take vitamin D.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to isolate one risk factor for things like a heart attack.
Exactly.
And things. Like there's so many things that go into it. Okay, well, let's see. I know that young people, I've heard, are starting to get diagnosed with arthritis a lot more common, or excuse me, a lot more commonly, I suppose. Why is that?
If I had to guess, it would be a sedentary lifestyle is, the number one thing that is going to prevent the onset of arthritis is remaining active.
Okay.
And
You're like the fifth doctor to come in here and say that to us.
It must be true then. But it's something that you wouldn't realize. I mean, it kind of goes back to the saying, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
And so maintaining an active lifestyle is actually protective for your joints. And so even running is actually okay. And so that's a big myth. That's one myth where people believe that long distance running will cause arthritis, and that has not really been shown to be true unless you get to the ultra elite levels. And that might have other confounders, such as people that have injuries and ACL tears, things like that.
Yeah.
But, a normal exercise regimen is protective for that. And as younger people, playing video games and we have more indoor hobbies, you're not out, riding bikes and, jumping through the creek anymore. And so I think that may be a reason why we're seeing that. Also, obesity is another big thing that really predisposes you to getting arthritis at an earlier age.
And is that because of sedentary lifestyle as well, probably?
Yes, okay. It is. And the diet that we eat, too. Diets that are very calorie dense. It's really easy to eat more than your maintenance calories and become obese. And then obesity contributes to arthritis in a few ways. One, the simplest way to think about it is you're carrying more weight. And so, when you do activities, your knees can see 3 to 4 times your body weight across your knees. So if you gain 20 pounds, it's seeing 60 or 80 pounds more than it would normally see.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to think about it. But also fat in general is very pro-inflammatory. So fat cells are not just sitting there doing nothing. They're making chemicals called adipokines that really promote inflammation. And that inflammation is a chronic low-level inflammation. It causes, it disrupts cartilage metabolism, basically, the cells. And it can promote the release of metalloproteinases, which basically soften the cartilage and make it softer, make it more predisposed to the damage from the weight-bearing activity. So, that's why when we advise people to lose weight to manage arthritis, it helps them on twofold. One, it reduces the mechanical load, but it also reduces the inflammatory processes as well.
It's just, it's so hard to diet. That's a whole nother
thing, you can make a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, like 95% of diets fail, which is just a whole nother thing. Let's talk about knee replacements. Because should you, a lot of people, one, can't get a knee replacement unless they lose weight. And two, can you have more than one? I've heard from some people you can and some people you can't.
Yeah, so with knee replacements, it's a last ditch option. So it's kind of the end of the road for knee arthritis. Okay. And so that's when you've tried all the other forms of treatment, diet, exercise, anti-inflammatory medications, different types of injections. But when somebody has bone-on-bone arthritis, pain every day, they can't do what they want to do, and they're limiting their activities because of it, that's when they're ready for a knee replacement.
Okay.
And I tell people knee replacements should last 20 or 30 years. The implants now are much better than they were previously. And you can't have more than one. It can get redone. It can get redone multiple times. But each time you redo it, there's higher risks. And so you really want to do it once or twice. But that being said, I mean, I've done knee replacements on people in their 30s. I don't like to. No, I try to push them off. I don't like to do that. But when you have somebody that has horrible arthritis, they can't play with their kids, they can't walk. I tell them that you got to enjoy your life now. Your life's not going to get better as you get older.
No,
getting
old's not for sissies, according to my grandfather.
And so, that's why if they know, like, okay, we're going to do this now, but in 20 or 30 years, it may have to get redone, and it can get redone for a couple of reasons. The plastic in between the metal can wear out, and that's an easy fix, or the implant can debond from the bone, and that's not too difficult to fix either, but it's still another surgery. And
sure.
So
it's a lot on the body.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is kind of what we shaped this whole podcast around, this topic in particular. How much popping am I supposed to do? Because when I wake up in the morning and I roll my feet around, they sound like popcorn. Is that bad?
Mine do too.
Okay.
And it's okay. So when I wake up in the morning, I walk across the carpet, my feet just...
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
Yep. And as long as it doesn't hurt, it's nothing to worry about. And so there's a few things that cause sound in your joint. And usually it's nothing bad. So the first thing is the popping and cracking. And so that's just related to the dissolved gas in the synovial fluid, the fluid around your joints. And when you pull a joint or you flex it beyond a certain point, it causes a vacuum, a negative pressure, and it can pull that gas out. It makes a little bubble and it pops. And so that's what you...
It's so satisfying.
Yeah. So that's what that is. But there's other things that can cause sound around joints. So the most common thing is people come in and they'll show me that their knee is grinding. Ooh. And so that grinding sensation is actually not typically the bone grinding on the bone. It's the synovial lining, the synovium. It kind of just rolls over itself as it goes through the motion. And so people can feel, we call it crepitation, but a little bit of it sounds kind of like grinding when they go through motion, but it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
Then there are certain joints, like especially the hip, you can have tendons that slide over bony prominences, and that can cause snapping, and that's usually nothing to worry about unless it becomes painful.
Okay.
And then finally, if you have bad arthritis, you can have grinding, but that is much less common than the other three that I see.
Okay, so good. So popping's not terribly bad.
It's not terribly bad.
That is good to know. What kind of damage, well, you kind of already touched on this, but what kind of damage does sitting do to our joints?
So that's really a great question, because it causes more damage than you think. So people wake up, have a sit-down job, come home, sit down, and then go to sleep. And
yeah, sit.
And so that lack of activity is actually harmful long term. The body needs that stress.
Do you want to stand up right now as we answer these questions?
I'm good. Yeah. But that's something that, it's something that you think, oh, I'm not going to cause any harm by, sitting down all day and protecting my joints. It doesn't work that way. So it kind of goes back to if you don't use it, you lose it. And so by maintaining that activity, you stimulate bone density and muscle and also muscle growth, but also moving your joints also causes your joint to create a lubrication, basically, that helps with stiffness and pain and things like that.
Okay.
So
you're saying we should all have standing desks?
At least the option to get up and move around a few times during the day, or during lunch, go for a 20-minute walk, something like that, to get some sort of activity is important.
Well, and also it's so good for your mental health as well. It clears the cobwebs.
That's absolutely. I think that doing a 20 or 30-minute walk a day is one of the most helpful things that you can do, not just for your physical health, but your mental health too. And there's been good studies that show that it reduces the onset of dementia, and it improves depression, anxiety, things like that.
Absolutely. We've all felt it. All right, I have one last topic, and I don't know, you may get up and walk out, because a lot of people in the medical field have opinions, and that is chiropractors.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on chiropractors?
So they are a valuable piece of the healthcare model, and
good. Surprising to hear that.
They come in two different styles. There's more the traditionalists, and I can't remember the name that they gave themselves, but they were the ones that felt that all disease processes were caused by subluxations in the spine that compress the nerves, and so that some of them believe that diabetes is caused by nerve compressions in the spine. Oh. And that's clearly ridiculous. That's just not, there's no physiologic reason for that. But then there's other ones that just are kind of like musculoskeletal non-operative doctors. And so they can help by, encouraging exercise and stretching, trigger point.
Sure.
Thing. I did a literature review on this probably about 10 years ago now, and the back manipulations have been shown to be as effective as taking anti-inflammatory medicine and exercise and things like that. So it is still an option. It's probably might be better than taking medications all the time.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's helpful for kind of acute low back pain. So people that have like a flare up, you do a couple sessions, seems like it's helpful for that. Where people get into issues where you have chronic problems where they say, okay, you need to come see me 3 times a week for the next 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And it'll get better. And it probably would have gotten better all with any treatment.
Oh,
so
you think? Okay.
I think that, I let people kind of decide if they feel that chiropractic manipulations have been helpful for them, go for it. Mm. I do caution a little bit about the neck manipulations. There's some concern over possible causing strokes, like rare brainstem stroke. It's super rare,
Yeah,
but it's something that pops up in the literature enough, and you wouldn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing that I do caution about, kind of the fast manipulations where they kind of take your head and crack it.
Yeah.
But they've shown that cervical mobilization, where you kind of like gentle range of motion, things like that, are just as effective without that same risk.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I'm surprised.
And I also wouldn't go to a chiropractor to cure allergies or diabetes.
Yeah.
And so
Well, I mean, that's
I might get
almost
some backlash from that, but that is not something I would do.
No, I mean, I could see why. I've been to chiropractors where they've had me hold a jar of pills, and if I can push against their arm, then that means that I can take the pills. But if it makes me weak, then I was like, what is
That
this
is strange.
nonsense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I've also been to chiropractors that have worked miracles. So I think it all depends on the practitioner. I think you're right.
Yep.
Well, I think that's all my questions about bone density.
All right.
You did great.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for coming today.
Yeah.
By the way, on the way out of the studio, Dr. Ruffalo mentioned something we forgot to talk about, which was alcohol. Alcohol leaches vitamin and minerals from your bones. That's what he said. He said alcoholics have the worst bones of anybody he sees, which is important. So if you drink alcohol, keep that in mind. And again, yet another doctor telling us we got to stay active. As much as you don't like to exercise, you better get over it. Sarah Has Questions is a production of Capital Broadcasting Company. My guest today was Dr. Michael Ruffalo, an orthopedic surgeon with Wake Orthopedics. To find out more about him or any of the other providers from the Wake Orthopedic team, go to wakeortho.com. If you have thoughts about any episode or questions you want me to ask in a future episode or ideas for an episode at all, send me a message in the link. You'll find it in the show notes. Thanks for listening.